Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire supported by Glenlivet Books. Why do Hindus in America think it's important to protest against India's mistreatment of minorities and Muslims in particular? And second, how do they respond to the Modi government's angry reaction? Those are two key issues I shall explore today with the Executive Director of Hindus for Human Rights, Sunita Viswanath, who joins us from New York. Sunita Viswanath, let's start with the congressional briefing held on the 12th of January. It was organized by 17 civil society organizations, including your own Hindus for Human Rights. The Indian government sharply criticized the event. The spokesman of the Ministry of External Affairs, Arindam Bagchi, said, and I'm quoting him, "The track record of the event organizers is as well known as the biases and political interests of the participants." As someone who organized that briefing, how do you respond to the claim that you're biased against India?
First, I should say thank you so much, Karanji, for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. This platform is important for all of us in the Indian diaspora who are concerned about what's happening in India, the direction India is going in. And so I'm very happy to be here talking to you. Thank you. The congressional briefing that you're talking about, the January 12th, we do them every 2 weeks. And so there was the congressional briefing on January 12th. There was also the big congressional briefing on January 26th, Republic Day. And these two congressional briefings that have happened in this new year have really hit the news cycle. And so they've gotten traction and people have noticed, and yes, the Indian government has noticed and has made these remarks. I would say that the reason that for the 2.5 years that Hindus for Human Rights has existed, and a few years even before that, these congressional briefings have been organized to raise attention, raise awareness of the deteriorating democracy, deteriorating human rights, religious freedom in India, is because we are concerned. The groups that are coming together, and that group of 17 coalitions is growing because we are concerned and we deeply love India. The Indian groups, the South Asian organizations, and the non-South Asian organizations are coming from a place of deep care and concern and love. And the Indian government talks about the bias of us, Hindus for Human Rights, and our partner organizations. I would say the allegation of bias itself is biased. We are biased. We are biased towards a pluralistic India. That's our bias. That bias was shared by the founders of India. The India that the government is talking about is the opposite India, where there is no pluralism. I would say the India that they are fighting for creating is a fascistic India, where only upper caste Hindus have rights and everybody else is a second-class citizen and perhaps is not even welcome in India.
So in a nutshell, you're saying the Modi government is actually standing up and fighting for a fascistic India. And secondly, you dismiss and reject the claim that you and your organization are biased against India.
Absolutely, Karanji, absolutely. There's the question to be posed to anybody accusing us of being anti-India is, which India are you talking about? Are you talking about Gandhi's India, Ambedkar's India, the India that is enshrined in India's own constitution? Or are you talking about destroying that constitution and making an India where there's the Hindu majority community, especially the upper caste, have the rights? And so many things that have been happening in recent years in India. Just look at the CAA and the NRC, an actual citizenship law that makes religion the criteria for citizenship. That India is not Gandhi and Ambedkar's India. It is Savarkar and Golwalkar's India. So which India are they talking about? I want to say the most pro-India thing that a person can do, an Indian citizen or a person outside India who cares about India, is to defend Gandhi and Ambedkar's India, pluralistic India.
Now, Sunita Viswanath, one of the people who spoke at that congressional briefing on the 12th was India's former Vice President Hamid Ansari. He expressed concern that India's civic nationalism is being replaced by cultural nationalism And he also said that citizens are being identified on the basis of their faith, and that is creating intolerance and insecurity. Am I right in saying that it was your organization, Hindus for Human Rights, that invited Mr. Ansari and asked him to speak at that congressional briefing?
Yes, it was the Republic Day congressional briefing on January 26th, and it was Hindus for Human Rights that I personally phoned Hamid Ansari ji and asked him if he would be a part of this briefing, and he graciously agreed. So yes, we invited him. It was our young video team that went to Ansari ji's house and taped the recording. We are one of 17 coalition partners. If you look at the response from the government in India and the media, you would think that there was only one organizer of that congressional briefing, and it's a Muslim organization. There are 17 organizations, and we, Hindus for Human Rights, played the lead role in inviting this particular speaker. The organization that faced the most attacks in the media and from the government is Indian American Muslim Council. And Hamid Ansari was not the only speaker in the congressional briefing, but he was the only Muslim speaker. So the attacks are against the Muslim organization in the coalition and the Muslim speaker. I ask you, why, in all of the negative media and statements that were given by the government, why are they all targeted towards one Muslim organization out of 17 and one Muslim speaker? We did just as much work in organizing the congressional briefings, Hindus for Human Rights. Why is it inconvenient for the media and the government to make it clear to the people that there is a Hindu organization that is standing against Hindutva and this Hindutva government?
Let me pick up on that particular point. As you said, the government clearly suggested that the congressional briefing was organized by an organization called the Indian American Muslim Council. They completely ignored the fact that your organization, Hindus for Human Rights, was equally involved. And the government tried to suggest that the Indian American Muslim Council is an organization that is giving India a bad name. Are any of these allegations against the Indian American Muslim Council justified and right? Is it a Islamic Muslim oriented biased organization? Secondly, is it out to give India a bad name?
Indian American Muslim Council is an organization, as its name tells us, of Indian Muslims in America. They are Indian Muslims in America. That's who they are. So yes, they are made up of Muslims. They are our close partner. We have worked closely with them since 2019, when we were founded, Hindus for Human Rights were founded, and we trust them. As a Hindu organization, we have close partnership with them. They are not anti-India. In fact, just like us, they are fighting for the India we all grew up in, the India where Hindus and Muslims, broke bread together, celebrated festivals together, and did not at heart mistrust each other, and children are not taught to hate each other. So Indian American Muslim Council is not what the government is accusing them of being. They are not a pro-terrorist organization. They're an organization just like Hindus for Human Rights that loves the India of Gandhi and Ambedkar.
Let's at this point go back.
And can I say one more thing? You said that we are being, Indian American Muslim Council, Hindus for Human Rights, we are being accused of giving India a bad name. I want to ask you, who is giving India a bad name? Is it not the government? Is it not the government's policies? Is it not a religion-based citizenship amendment law? Is it not lynchings of Muslim youth? Is it not the throwing into jail of anybody who exercise their constitutional rights by expressing their opinion? Even if that opinion is dissent, they have the right to express it. Who is giving India a bad name? Who is bringing India into the pages of the international media day in, day out with allegations of deteriorating minority rights?
Absolutely. Let's at this point talk a little bit in detail about some of the things that were said at those two congressional briefings, the one of the 12th and the one of the 26th. And I'll start with Hamid Ansari. In your opinion, did Mr. Ansari speak with bias against India, or did he speak in a truthful, balanced, objective way? Which of the two?
Definitely the latter. He is an elder statesman who is grace and dignity personified. He has spent his whole life in service of India as a diplomat, and then as he was a vice president. This man is, at this age, is having to stand up on a global stage and speak up for the India that was created 75 years ago as a land. I mean, I'm so humbled and proud that the creators of India saw India as a land where every Indian citizen would have equal rights. That is the India that this elder gentleman, statesman, is standing up and calling India to task, to defend.
Now, the government has also been very critical of the US senator as well as the 3 US congressmen who participated in those congressional briefings. They are Ed Markey, Jim McGovern, Andy Levin, and Jamie Raskin. They are said to be anti-Indian. Are they?
They are not anti-India. Anybody who took the time and made the effort to listen to their statements would find that these are lawmakers in the United States who are doing their job as lawmakers and speaking out of, they all talked about the shared values of the two democracies. And those shared values makes it a duty of an elected politician to speak when democratic values are being betrayed. Each one of those lawmakers spoke about their appreciation and respect for the Indian democracy. And one of them, Andy Levin, talked about his deep love for India. He called himself a Bharatwala. He has a personal connection to India. And so each one of them, and each one of them also talked about the ways in which democracy in America is also threatened. And so the work of defending democracy, we're a small planet, an increasingly connected planet. This is not happening just in India and just in America. It's a zeitgeist in the world, and we are connected. And so, and India itself over the years, today, India, as it should, speaks out about the rights of Hindus in countries where Hindus are a minority, and that is appropriate, and we should all do that. But I remember a time when India would speak out about human rights in countries like Palestine, South Africa, and we would do this because this is what this is what countries and nations need to do for each other.
Absolutely. Let me quote to you what Senator Ed Markey said at one of those congressional briefings. I remain concerned about Prime Minister Modi's government's efforts to peel back the rights of religious minorities in India. Laws on religious conversion, citizenship, and other restrictive measures fly in the face of India's inclusive secular constitution and its core tenets of democracy. Do you agree with what Senator Markey said? Or do you think, as clearly was being suggested by the government and as clearly some of the media that supports the government claimed, that this is speaking out of turn? So do you agree with the senator, or do you agree with the view he's speaking out of turn?
I agree with the senator. I could have said the same statement. And again, let me ask you, Genocide Watch has put India on alert. US Holocaust Museum has said that India is one of the countries where an act of mass violence is highly likely to take place. Freedom House has moved India from a free country to a partly free country. Are they all wrong? Are we crazy that we who love India are standing on an international platform asking the Indian citizens and Indian lawmakers to stand up and defend India? Or is it all fake news?
Okay, let me at this point widen our discussion. Why did you believe that these congressional briefings were necessary?
The congressional briefings are necessary because the world needs to understand that something is wrong in India. India is on a trajectory towards a very dangerous, it's on a very dangerous path. And the logical extension of this path is terrifying, frankly. And what we saw in Haridwar in December is just proof to what I am saying. We saw Hindu religious leaders, sadhu, sadhvis, stand up and literally call for genocide of Muslims. So that is a manifestation which is, immediately gripping and terrifying, blood-curdling, which we want. The majority community in India, the Hindu community, my community, is behaving as if there's absolutely nothing wrong.
Can I put this to you? Is one of your intentions to get the US government, the US Congress, to put pressure on India to stop these hate speeches, to stop this mistreatment of minorities and Muslims in particular? Was that your intention, to mobilize opinion?
Yes, we are American citizens. And so the power that we have is to influence our elected officials here in the States. But we have roots in India, most of us. And we love India, our families are in India. And we are also global citizens and secular-minded people. And so our friends, our close friends, and our families, many of us are from other minority communities, like Muslim communities, etc. And so what we can do, what the power and the clout that we have, is to speak up and move, hopefully, our American lawmakers and eventually, I hope, the Biden administration to speak up about deteriorating democracy in India. It hasn't happened enough. These are 4 elected officials that came onto our platform, but it should be all of them. It should be the Biden administration's official line that India's democracy and India's democratic values are being threatened.
Can I ask you this? As a follow-up to that, can I ask you this? How important is it for Hindus in particular, to speak out against and to fight against Hindutva?
Yes. So we created an organization, Hindus for Human Rights. And that is by design because, and there's 2 parts to my answer. One is organizational, strategic. The other is very personal. So on the organizational or strategic side, if we want, which we do, to influence India, move India, put pressure on India to obey its own values, its own constitution, the majority community, which is the Hindu community, must be activated, must wake up, must see what is happening beneath their very eyes. The fact that the Hindu community, for the most part, is just silent, is not doing anything, saying anything, and is behaving as if everything is completely fine, is very, very alarming and dangerous. And so Hindus for Human Rights, what we are doing is we are trying to work in the social justice arena and add a Hindu voice for every social justice struggle there is, because the heart of Hinduism is, Hinduism itself is pluralistic in its own definition, in its own core tenets. But on the other hand, we are working within the Hindu diaspora to move Hindus to speak up as Hindus on human rights in India. So that's the organizational answer, because if Hindus don't get mobilized, then it is impossible to fight Hindutva. How is it possible to find Hindutva if Hindus don't participate? How is it possible to make change in India, political change, social change, if Hindus are not part of that movement? So that is the organizational reason. But the personal reason for this, for all of us in Hindus for Human Rights, is that while Indian democracy, Indian constitution is being decimated, the other thing that is being decimated is Hinduism itself. And we care about that because this is the religion that we were born into, that we embrace. It's a religion that teaches us that we are all one, that the divine is in you and me equally and in every part of the universe. It teaches us Atiti Devo Bhava, which means, what does it mean? Atiti Devo Bhava means there is no other. Forget otherizing Muslims. There is no other. The Muslim is us. That is what Hinduism teaches. Now, Hinduism also has within it the caste system. It was Hinduism that created the caste system and perpetuates it. So any step we take as Hindus to do right in the world must deny, denounce, reject caste.
Absolutely.
That is part of that work.
In other words, your fight is both to protect and preserve India, the country you love, but also to protect and preserve Hinduism, the religion you love. In which case, let me ask you this. How do you view the way Muslims are being treated since 2014? And I deliberately use that date, 2014, because that's when Prime Minister Modi first became Prime Minister of India. I'm talking about cattle lynching, love jihad, anti-conversion laws, citizenship rights, the constant taunting of Muslims. You even have a point where the Home Minister of India refers to them as termites. And then, as you said yourself, there were those blood-curdling calls from a Dharam Sansad, of all places, a Dharam Sansad, calling for Muslim genocide. And there was deafening silence from the government, and not a word has been said by the Prime Minister, though 2 months have passed. How do you view all of that?
The evidence is before us. The shameful, deeply shameful episodes that you have just listed since 2014, starting with the lynchings of hundreds of Muslim, mostly youth, all the way till today, where young girls and teachers are being denied the right to wear their hijab to go to school, and everything in between, shows that Muslims in India are under existential threat. The CAA NRC has the potential to disenfranchise all of India's Muslims. And this is not hyperbole. I mean, anybody who says this is exaggeration should just watch the videos that went viral from the Dharam Sansad, where these sadhus and sadhvis are literally asking all Hindus, including children, to put down their pens and take up swords. And they're literally saying, worshipping Godse and saying, thank goodness he killed, and I don't want to say a bad word that they use for Gandhi. This is not hyperbole. And so, and then you just think about, what did Adama Dieng he was the former UN ambassador to prevent genocide, when he said genocide, it does not start with gas chambers, it starts with hate speech. Any of us know that India is replete with hate speech of Hindus towards Muslims. We all experience it, not only in the public sphere, in our private family and community spaces.
In fact,
and can
I point out for the audience that under the International Convention on Genocide, which India is a signatory to, genocide starts with the call for genocide.
Exactly.
And this was pointed out to us by one of the former judges of the Supreme Court of India, Justice Madan Lakur. So as far as technical definitions of genocide are concerned, genocide has happened in India. Those calls amount to genocide.
It's according to the technical definition, genocide is underway, and the citizens of India need to wake up and smell the coffee.
We're coming to the end of this interview. I want to ask you just 3 questions, but I'll ask you for shorter answers as well. Recently, the United States Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Rashad Hussain, criticized the Karnataka government over the hijab controversy. You referred to the hijab controversy yourself a moment ago. Once again, the Indian government told him not to interfere in India's internal matters and sharply criticized him. In your eyes, was Rashad Hussain interfering, or was he right to speak out?
He was right to speak out, as every human being is right to speak out every time they encounter injustice of any kind. So he was right to speak out. He was targeted with these comments, no doubt about it, because he is a Muslim. And they said that his comments were motivated which made me laugh, because of course they were motivated. They were motivated by his job, which is to protect international religious freedom. You know,
Tell me something. What impact has this image of India as an increasingly intolerant country where Muslims are being mistreated, persecuted, and there are even calls for genocide of Muslims? What impact has this had on the image of India, on the American people around you, your fellow American citizens? What impact has it had on them?
People are waiting. I mean, just in December, you saw Christmas Day attacks all across India on churches, where Hindu mobs went and shouted Jai Shri Ram and broke statues of Jesus. That made it into the international news. And then, of course, the Dharam Sansad made it into the international news. And then that disgusting Bulli Bai episode made it into the international news, where Muslim women woke up on New Year's Day to see themselves being, you know, auctioned on this awful app. So these instances, these really shameful incidents are making it into the news. So compared to 2.5 years ago, when Hindus for Human Rights started, more and more Americans, in my, you know, immediate experience, are aware that things are going in a wrong direction in America. I mean, just think about it. In December 2019, there was an editorial written by not an op-ed writer, but the editorial board of the New York Times that was titled, "Modi Makes His Bigotry Even Clearer." That would, who would have thought that the editorial board of one of the world's biggest newspapers would say this about a sitting Prime Minister of India, the world's largest democracy?
My last question. If there is no marked and visible change in India, will you continue? And perhaps will you take further your efforts to lobby the US Congress, your efforts to lobby the Biden administration?
Yes, absolutely. And more institutions, organizations, media houses will join, religious leaders will join us. More and more Hindu religious leaders will join us as well. You know, you had Arundhati Roy on your show just recently, and I was surprised that while, as she always does, she pointed out the dangers and the atrocities taking place, she also expressed hope and some optimism that India will not succumb to fascism. And I take hope from, you know, I really look up to her, and I take hope from her statement that she believes India it is at the brink, but it will not fall down that precipice. And I hope and pray that that is the case. And we certainly will intensify, escalate our efforts. And, you know, Umar Khalid, who is in jail now for 2 years, just before he was put into jail, this young, bright son of India, he came onto a webinar of ours, of Hindus for Human Rights and some of our partner organizations. And when I asked him a question, he said, "Sunita ji, I love the name of your organization, Hindus for Human Rights." And then he said, "I can only imagine the stress and the attacks you must be facing as a Hindu speaking out against what's happening in India. And so I'm so happy that you're doing this work. And people must be calling you anti-India, but you are in America. What else will you do? You're in America and you love India. What else will you do? You will sit in America and you will call for justice in India." And that young man, who is the age of my sons, is in jail. And I sit here in my house in New York. And if any of you are listening, citizens of India, especially Hindu citizens of India, please wake up and ask yourself, is your Rama the Jai Shri Ram of those Hindu boys with saffron shawls who were heckling and harassing young Muskan in Karnataka just a few days ago? Is that Rama your Rama? Or is your Rama Maryada Purusha, who cares about the whole world, whose consort Sita cares about every aspect of nature? Which is your Rama? Which is your Hinduism? And which is your India?
That is a very important question you raise. And I'm glad you've directed it at your fellow co-religionists, because there is an enormous responsibility on all of us as Hindus, because we are the majority of this country, to ensure that the mistreatment of our Muslim brothers and sisters, Christian brothers and sisters, stops, and stops immediately. And it is our responsibility to tell our government, not in our name. I thank you, Sunita Viswanath, for joining us and for speaking so forcefully. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you, Karan.